Welcome to BIB Today, the podcast from the newsroom of Business in Vancouver. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief. The week that we're watching right now is seeing the Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC, launch the world's largest investment platform of its kind, supporting the accelerated growth of businesses led by women. It follows an earlier commitment to create a women in technology venture fund, and it aims to tackle systemic barriers faced by women-led businesses, providing them with greater opportunity on the global stage and what it's going to have a lasting impact on the Canadian economy. It's called the Thrive Platform, and my guest today is Michelle Scarborough. She's the Women in Technology and the Thrive Venture Fund's managing partner. Good to talk to you. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
This is a big platform. This is not chump change here. Start by helping us understand the scope of all of it.
Sure. So the Thrive Platform is, as you said, it's the largest in its world. To really help women entrepreneurs really across the Canadian landscape elevate themselves. It's an investment platform with three main components: a $300 million venture fund, which is the Thrive Venture Fund, a $100 million allocation to invest in emerging managers with women in the GP or as a partner in a fund, and then the third pillar, which is the Thrive Lab. And the lab itself is really dedicated to pre-seed stage women that are looking to build companies. They may or may not have an idea whether that company is going to be venture backable, but they're seeking equity capital to help that company get off the ground and to turn their idea into a commercially viable business. And so the lab will be designed by the community, by partners in the market, and it will be a partnership strategy to help those women entrepreneurs as they build companies from the very early stages. The three components, obviously they dovetail together, and solving for building, putting equity to work in companies that are led by women, as well as in investors. Women investors will help to bring that marketplace together.
Can we roll back the clock 5 years and take a look at what the inaugural Women in Technology Venture Fund was there? And it was a large fund at the time. What have been the lessons learned and the evolution here that then takes BDC to this much larger platform?
Well, I think, when we started the fund in 2017, we started the fund at a time where we knew there was an enormous gap in the market, where we knew that women were an underserved segment when it came to venture capital or access to venture capital. And so when we started the fund in 2017, it was designed to solve for that gap. And at the same time, we had allocated about $20 million to invest in, again, that emerging GP female partner who wanted to build a venture capital firm. And so over the period of the last 5 years, what we've seen is an evolution in the market. We've seen the growth of more women founding companies, more women wanting to leave their corporate jobs and move into C-suite executive positions in emerging or growing Canadian tech companies, and to really kind of step up. We've also seen the emergence of more women becoming investors, both at the angel stage and in venture capital firms. And so we're seeing kind of the growth of everything. I think one of the things that we've also, that's been really poignant for me, I started as an entrepreneur and then became an investor. And one of the things that's really poignant for me is the number and the increase in the number of role models that we're seeing in the market. We're seeing more women, write big checks. We're seeing more women grow big businesses. Many of those are in our portfolio today from the Women in Tech from the first fund. And those women are acting as role models. And one of the things we consistently hear from the marketplace is the need for more of those. The need for women growing their businesses to be able to see others that have done it before them, so that they can then emulate that behavior. So,
because obviously the launch of a fund isn't for nothing. You obviously are determining a problem that has to be solved. Tell me a little bit about what you think the gaps remain in the system.
Yeah, so we still see gaps at the early stage, pre-seed stage, seed stage, still enormous gaps, not just in investing in women-led companies, but in the pre-seed and seed stages of the technology ecosystem generally. So we're solving for that with the fund as well as with the lab. That gap still remains. We still also see gaps in terms of talent. We've got, as you saw coming out of COVID, there were big talent challenges. There's obviously tons of hiring and then lots of people, resigning and trying to figure out what they wanted to be and sort of the next version of themselves. That created a very hot market for talent and drove, the numbers of the dollars that were being paid to talent up and causing some friction. So what we're seeing now is sort of a leveling out of that, but talent will still be hot. And Canada right now is also being seen as a place for foreign investors, primarily in the US, in venture capital, specifically to come and look for great opportunities. So I think the other thing we're seeing is an enormous opportunity set in Canada to build some amazing technology companies here.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but with all of the factors arrayed systemically and otherwise against women at times, is it such that when they make their pitches, when they set out and are rebuffed at an early stage, that that they are more likely to pull away from that and find something else than to continue their pursuit?
We hear this a lot. We hear about what happens in the boardroom a lot. We don't have that experience because we're a very diverse team. What some women will do and what we tell them is, one no is one step closer to a yes. And when you're pitching investors, the thing that people need to remember is that this is a long game. And, we're on both sides, the investor and the entrepreneur. We are looking for people that we want to work with. And the entrepreneur and the female entrepreneur needs to be looking for the same. Who are the people that are going to help her build a successful company? Those are the people that she needs to surround herself with. So when she gets a no, what she needs to ask is, okay, why is that a no? What are the business reasons why that might be a no for this firm? And how can I leverage that for the next meeting that I'm going to have with a potential investor, angel or venture capital? And then, are these the right investors for me and the company as I build the company itself? Who are the people I need around me? What networks do they have? Do they have deep pockets? Are they going to be able to help me bring this company to market or accelerate its growth in a market that I might not have access to yet? So we try to help these women position themselves so that they've got their best foot forward and they've got the confidence to stand up in that room and tell their story with conviction and with passion, but also, to be able to identify the right people that they want around them. I think the other thing that we also hear, which is really important, is that that women tend to focus very practically on how they're going to build the company. So oftentimes women will not, we hear this and we see it, often they will not overinflate, over-exaggerate the story. They'll be very practical of, how they're going to build the company and here are the metrics and so on, versus, and I'm using gross generalizations, by the way, here, just for the sake of the point. Women need to be practical, but they also need to talk about that vision and tell the story about what this company that they're building has the capability to be and their vision for the future. And in doing so, with practicality, that will beget the right investors listening to them.
I'm not in those shoes, but that sounds like a lot to overcome for somebody. You're talking about really, the change of your character, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's less a change in character. I would argue. I would say that it's bring your passion and bring yourself to what you're trying to present to an investor. Don't ever lose that, because that is, you're often entrepreneurs are building something because they've seen a gap in the market that they're trying to solve. They've experienced something personally that they're trying to overcome, or that somebody in their family or friends have overcome or need to. And so they're solving really important problems. And so there's no need to be shy about that.
Right.
And what I think the other thing that, you've got to remember is that as more women are at these boardroom tables, as investors listening to these stories, it does change the narrative in a boardroom. It does change the narrative at the investing table when we have diversity around that investing table, in the same way that you have diversity around your your executive table inside of those companies. And just even having that diversity makes the conversation very different.
Yeah, I've seen estimates over the years of what it means to have women participating in the workforce in terms of our economy. I've seen estimates around what happens if you have a strong national childcare program, what that means in terms of its own economic contribution. Do you have any guess on what it means if you can essentially turn this country into something that has a really full participation of all the women entrepreneurs that want to basically do their thing?
Oh man, I wouldn't even dare to guess, but if you want a hard number, but we know that when you invest in women-led businesses, those women-led businesses do return more. We know this. We are seeing this in studies, and we're also seeing it in our own portfolio. So we can point to things where this has been true.
Really?
We do. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're actually seeing it when you look at comparables in the marketplace, and we do this regularly. So we are seeing these changes active, and you can point to McKinsey studies, you can point to Deloitte studies. There's a bunch of different studies that have been done on this already, but we do think this is good for business, and our country is very diverse. So if you're taking a product to market, you want to be as diverse as your marketplace, as the people that you're selling to. And for us, we see that as an enormous opportunity because of the nature of what we're trying to do as investors. The more women-led companies that we can see, the more opportunities we have to knit the ecosystem together through our partners with respect to the lab, the more ways in which we can crowd in private sector capital to help these companies have access to not just the capital they need, but also the networks and the customer base that they require to build these big companies. If you put all of that together, it sounds a little bit, maybe motherhood and apple pie, but I do think that we, over time, will be able to make an enormous change, and we will see that happen in terms of economic dollars.
Yeah, also because of the scale of our country, and as you put it earlier, the talent crisis that we have in a lot of these cases. I mean, the diminution of someone's capabilities by virtue of not getting access to funding to pursue a really strong concept actually probably hurts us more than it would a big country.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think so. I mean, and even if you decide you're an entrepreneur and you decide that venture capital is not the right path for you, but but financing, debt can help you, or you're building a company and you want equity, but you're not on a venture path because you know that your risk return profile is not going to be 4 times, but still a great investment. There's no reason why we shouldn't be looking at those kinds of opportunities from an angel perspective or private equity. It's a matter of kind of making it all sing together in ways that are going to make sense. But we have a big opportunity right now, and there's never been a better time to be an investor than now.
Yeah, no question. I mean, the public is on side as well. Now, what I would wonder about is in setting up a tech fund 5 years ago, now with this fund, are you also getting some insights on where there has to be other kinds of interventions at an earlier stage, even before women are getting to you? I mean, we must be trying to deal with issues of education, with issues of acculturation in our school system around all of this. Any ideas of just, I'm turning to you as an authority now, not as someone who's making the policy or running a fund, but as someone with insight.
Yeah. So I think we need to start early. We need to teach entrepreneurship earlier in the schools. We need to teach kids how to think creatively and problem solve earlier on, so that they're working on working together to solve problems as opposed to in a silo all the time. So I think starting early is key. There are, great programs out there right now like Junior Achievement and SHAD and some of these other ones that do little bits and pieces. But I think if I were a school kid now, I would want to be learning about entrepreneurship early and how that all works, right? As opposed to later on. And then I think, the universities have done a good job of trying to develop mechanisms through Creative Destruction Lab and others to help bring science people together with business people to, take these amazing ideas that we have across the country and commercialize them. But we need to do more of that and get that out the door earlier and allow these women in particular to find their voice in all of that.
Would you mind if, as we conclude, would you mind telling me your own story on what did it for you?
Oh, what did it for me? I had really great mentors, and including my parents and my dad in particular. And he was the one that really was the driving force behind me very early on. And he was the one that said, you know what, like, don't take no for an answer. You can do it. I'll back you. I will put money into your companies. I will help you get there. And if somebody says no to you, get up and keep going. And that's kind of what I've done my whole career.
Yeah, I was ambivalent about doing an interview like this. I thought maybe better if you were interviewed by a woman. But I want to ask you the question about the role of men in all of this now, because yes, it's a women-led business venture fund, but as you see it, what's the big role for men in this?
Men are, like at the end of the day, we're all one. I'll say that. And men have as big a role to play as women do. We all have to work together on this. Culture change doesn't happen by itself, sitting in a room, having a conversation with one person. It can help, but it's not going to solve the problem systemically. We need to work together. We need to find ways to open doors to be mentors and sponsors like I had. And we need to do that in a way that isn't, that parks our egos, I would suggest, aside and allows for openness and creativity to come through. Because people often are just looking for somebody to talk to and a place where they can go to learn, to evolve their business idea, to build their company where they don't feel like they're threatened, right? And business doesn't have to be threatening. We got enough going on in the world where we really need to figure out how we work together and in a safer environment. Men have to play a critical role in all of that.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation, and I expect now that because you did there was a fund in 2017 of a certain size, 2022 fund of a certain larger size. I guess 5 years from now, there'll be a couple of $1 billion fund from BDC. So
we'll see. We'll see.
Do I have my math right? Yeah, okay. Michelle Scarborough, good to see you. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Thanks so much.
You've been watching BIV Today. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief. We'll see you again.